This show is heaven's boldest statement that it's not about who's the most connected, it's about who's most called. This is God Made Millionaire TV with T.C. Bradley, where we highlight the risk takers and the resilient, the ones who were counted out by man, but handpicked by God, those who made bold moves, those who made God moves, and they overcame the odds to activate their God-given dream. Let's crack open the God-Made Millionaire TV bank vault and activate some God-given dreams.
Welcome to another edition of Business Leader Spotlight. Joining us today in studio is Rich Beechler. Rich is the author of the compelling book, Is He Dead Yet? A journey from humble beginnings in one-room schools to navigating a turbulent life marked by broken families, addiction, and despair. But amidst the darkness, and I mean darkness, Rich found redemption when a divine intervention altered his pathway, transforming his despair into hope and purpose. Rich, welcome to the show. I'm so honored to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me over. I appreciate it.
What an incredible story you have. You know, I often talk about the road one travels to get to our studios. And a lot of times people think, well, he's talking about the interstate or he's talking about flying in to be appear on the show. But I'm talking about the road of life. You've had quite a life that you've lived and quite an epic comeback story that you've lived in your life.
Yes, I don't doubt a minute that I'm very blessed. You know, the life I started out in wasn't that, attractive. And through the years, as I progressed through my youth to, middle age to adulthood, it was probably the worst possible life you could imagine. And I had no clue that it was so devastating, because when you're doing a life like that, when you're in the middle of it and you're moving moment to moment through those days, months, and years, you don't look at it as a struggle. You just look at it as the next thing to do. And as I went through those days, months, and years, I experienced a lot of bad things with a lot of bad people and got really bad results.
Well, your book, Is He Dead Yet? The title grabs you immediately, and I've read your book, and I'm going to tell the audience watching right now that, Rich is unlike anybody you're ever going to meet, because he operates with brutal honesty. Brutal honesty and transparency. His book is an eye-opener with the life that you've lived, and I think it's important that you hear from somebody that's been there and been through it and has come out on the other side of it. We're living in such a time, Rich, that people need hope. And some, like you, that have grown up, didn't have the best advantages starting off in life with your home life, growing up as a child. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, we would move from state to state, many times waking in the middle of the night, packing everything into the car and going on to the next state or county or location. And the question was, always, well, where are we going? Well, we're going to Grandma's. Well, why are we going in the middle of the night? Well, to beat traffic. Well, I don't know how much traffic you can beat in Springfield, Missouri in 1953, but we believed it because, like I said, we were kids, and we moved in little increments from state to state. I was the baby of the family, and we went from church to church because that's where you went to get your school clothes. That's where you went to get your PG&E bill paid. That's where you went to get money to leave town. The thing about it is that the life from one moment to the next consisted of change.
You had no stability as a child, and it was always transition. You would go to a school, and did you go to school?
Yeah, I went to school at first in one-room schools and two-room schools, and we had outhouses, and we would stay in farm labor camps, because back then we were called fruit tramps, and we would live on riverbanks or in little cabins manufactured by the farmer, and with next to a river or something, and then we would I remember one time, I don't remember how old I was, but I remember we ended up, as I was a baby and there was 4 of us, and we ended up in a facility of some kind, and they had metal bunks and blankets and food, and then one day, another day came. We were there for a month or 2, and then we were back in the car again, traveling on. From the time I was born till 5 years old, we had moved in little increments. Where at 8 years old, I was in California. We had moved through all the Midwestern states and through this Texas, and all over, because that's what we did. We moved and we followed the fruit, or Dad would find a little job somewhere in a gas station, or manage a bar or something like that. We never knew what we were going to be doing.
Wow. Now, if I tell you this statement, I want you to tell me if it's true or false. Your past doesn't equal your future.
No.
True or false?
There's no comparison. At 10 years old, I was left in a motel, basically, by my mom. And then 11 years old, I went into my first foster home, where I was introduced to drugs. I ended up slamming acid at 11 years old. 14 years old, I ran away from my third foster home. And for the next 30 years or so, middleman stolen merchandise and drugs for biker gangs and the Mexican mafia even. At the end of my drinking and drugging career, I was homeless for 5 or 6 years, living underneath the bushes. I'd wake up in the morning, do drugs, go find a trash can to find breakfast, and the lifestyle that I had at that time, there was no way possible at all in existence, no way that my life was ever going to be better, that I was ever going to have anything, that I was never going to accomplish anything, that I was never going to be successful in doing anything. I had no friends, I had no family, I had no job experience, I had no nothing. I had dirt and hair at the end of my drinking and drugging career. And today it's not that way.
You said so much there. You said so much, and I want to get to your transformation experience. But you said something, you threw this out, and it's in your book, by the way, talking about the Bushman. You actually lived in the bushes.
Yes.
Tell me more about that before you tell me about the transformation.
When you're in a drug psychosis for many years, and your survival depends on how many drugs you can accumulate and how many you can buy and sell and manipulate. Of course, I was using the whole time. I don't think there's any drug or combination of drugs that I haven't tried or used. And in that addiction cycle, first it was fun, and then it was not fun, and then it was terrible. And my success rate of accomplishing anything deteriorated with the amount of drugs and the drug addiction that I pulled myself into. And going from being a somewhat successful addict, alcoholic, after many years, I became not so successful, where I ended up, I had a 1965 10-wide trailer, 30-footer, and I was living in that, and I had a 1965 Dodge Coronet, and the 65-foot or the 10-wide trailer, 30-foot trailer went to the dope man, and then the engine on my Dodge Cornet blew up. And so I found that I had no place to live and nothing to get around in. So I moved into the streets. I learned that there was a lot of things in those dumpsters worth $50. And if it was brass, it was a half a 16th. I wasn't the guy that had the gun that would rob you and break into your house. I was the guy that would find something from somebody or in a dumpster and try to negotiate the value of it for drugs or alcohol so that I could continue living the lifestyle I had. Because then it wasn't about making any money to try to get out of any situation. It was just survival day to day. This one time there was this bush, and what I would do is I would come at an angle where nobody could see, and I would, because you see, the thing about it out there, if people know where you're at, the other homeless people too, and they know where you're at, they will rob you. And so the key is to find a place where nobody could find you. The cops can't find you. You can't get rousted. And I would come at a bush somewhere from an angle that nobody could see the entrance, and I'd start breaking branches as I went in, and I would wiggle back and forth. And I came up to this one spot, and I found this bush, and I broke it open, and I started wiggling back and forth, and all of a sudden, it opened up into this big opening. And I went, wow, this is awesome. This is the best bush I've ever had. Well, I went to there was a dumpster that somebody was unloading in their house. I took the mattress out of the roll-out bed. I put it in there, and I went down to Helig Myers where they had their plastic all delivered to cover their furniture, and I took the plastic out of their dumpster, and I lined the inside of this bush, and I was awesome. And I was sitting there at night. It took me all day to set it up, and I hear rustling in the bushes, and I'm thinking, oh, the birds are settling in. It was at night, and I looked through the plastic, and it was just about dark, and I look and I focus, and I realize it's not birds. It's rats and mice.
Oh.
Well, that's okay. I've been taking care of myself a long time. I can handle this. I can deal with this. And I learned something real valuable while living in that bush. Actually, I didn't move. I didn't need to move. I can handle and deal with anything. But I learned something real valuable. Rats and mice will lick you before they bite you. So it's very important that you don't get so loaded you don't feel them lick.
What a life lesson on our show today, I would tell you. What age did your transformation occur? At what point in your life did it change? Because we have people tuning in, and they may not be living in a bush, but they resonate with your story. I was telling you that coming up here to the studio, I talked to two people about you and your story, and they said your story resonates, and I think that's why your book is so successful, is that it's a brutally honest telling of your story. But at what age, what happened that made this switch to the successful author? Because although I've only talked about one book, you have two other books that you've authored, a children's book and a book on poetry we're going to get to if we have time in the show. But what age did it change for you, Rich?
Well, I was abandoned. Somewhere down in San Diego, I was probably 9 years old, just before that event. I ended up in a church, and the minister says, come on down and ask Jesus into your heart. And I went down, and I asked Jesus into my heart. And I had an overwhelming transformation of spiritual, mental, just a physical transformation that caused me to weep right on the spot. And I cried for probably a minute or two. And then I stopped crying, and I got up and I walked away, went on with my path. And then it was shortly after that I was left in the motel, and from that point probably went on to live probably the worst life you could possibly imagine. Now, the thing about it is looking back, you see, through those years of turmoil and chaos to where I'm at today, I look back and I say, man, oh man, you know, because back then it was, when I started getting sober, I would say, am I doing the right thing? Am I talking to the right people? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And looking back, there's only one thing that I've wasted in all those years. And that was the time I spent worrying. Because God had me
Wow.
right in his hand.
Wow.
All the situations that I had in my life that were just
Rich,
edge-biting.
right now, I want you to take a moment. There's a hush that came into this studio when you shared what you just shared. That's powerful. And right now, we're living in a time where people are consumed with worry. It's like a dark cloud that has surrounded them. And you may think that the show is for people that have been addicted or going through addiction, but this is on a different level. I want you to take your time and give that message of hope and inspiration to that person that is, they need that hope, because without hope you don't have anything. And the spirit of worry.
What took the worry away from me was when I woke up underneath the bushes one day, after living lower than the lowest. I woke up underneath the bushes, and after a life of turmoil and chaos and degradation and disgust, where I didn't even like myself, the sense of loneliness grabbed me. And I curled up on a little ball, and I cried. My muscles pulled on themselves, and I said a little prayer. I said, "Dear Lord, thank you for loving me. Thank you for giving me of my sins. Thank you for keeping me off drugs and alcohol. Thank you for having your will, your way in my life. Help me to be like I'm supposed to be, act like I'm supposed to act, and think like I'm supposed to think." I said that prayer over and over and over. And after a couple of days, I didn't die. The thing about it is, though, I made a deal at that time with God. And it doesn't make any difference whether you have God or don't. If you don't have God, borrow mine, he works. The thing about it is I made a deal with him. I said, God, I don't know if I can do this sober thing. I don't know if I'm able to do that because I'm really, really, really bad at making decisions. And when I do stuff, I do things wrong. I go down the wrong alley. I go down the wrong path. My mouth spews out ugly, and I'm going to make a deal with you. I'll keep doing this thing called sobriety. I'll keep doing the best I can do to be the best I can be if you cover my back. When I go down that dead alley, you open a path out the other end. If I say something bad and it doesn't do anybody any good, I need you to correct it for me. If I act like an idiot and I embarrass people other than myself, step in and fix it. If you do that, if you come in and cover my back every time, I will do it. I will do the best I can do to be who I'm supposed to be.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. What happened after that moment that you told me about the testing?
Yeah, I ended up, I was working for a painter, and he was ripping me off on my paycheck. And I went to the unemployment office and I said, can he do this? Because I've never had a job, really, and I didn't know how things worked. And they said, no, he can't do that. Would you like to be retrained? I said, sure. And it's a long story what happened. It was a divine God decision that ended up with me being retrained in computers. I didn't know if you could plug in a laptop, or I didn't know what a laptop was. I didn't know if you plugged in or if it was battery operated. Or I didn't know how it was, whatever it was. And I went into this class where there was 37 people in the class. And at the end of that class, over a year later, I ended up with Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer and three other certifications, or 4 other certifications. And the only other person in that class, and the class ended with 7 people left in the class at graduation. And there was only another little Asian gal that received the certification I did. And you see, that makes a big deal, because I never went to school. And if I didn't have the encouragement of some of the people that was around me in sobriety at the time, I would have stopped going. I would have failed, because in my head I'm thinking, you're not good enough. Who do you think you are? You think you're just this and that. And I had people tell me, don't quit. Just keep going. Do what you can do. Let God figure out the results. Just don't stop doing what you're doing. And it turned out, that, today I've been working in IT for over 20 years. And I've worked
Successful career.
I've worked some of the nicest companies, Intel, all kinds of places. Blue Shield, I've worked at, lots of places. And I'm an IT manager now. And my success isn't because I decided one day I was going to do this. I'm going to go do this thing, and I'm going to be this, and I'm going to be. All it was me following the doors that God opened up for me. And as the door opened up and I went through the hallway, I would go through that hallway and I would do whatever that hallway designed for me to do. And then, poof, another door would open, and I would have to make a decision. Do I want to do this, or do I want to do that? And then after I made that decision, then I would go down that hallway, and then that hallway. And every time I went down a hallway, different opportunities arose. It wasn't a design that I implemented or thought that I was going to be so good at. It was because God had a touch on my path. And with me being open...
God had a touch on your path since you were a child, 9 or 10 years old, in that church.
Yes.
That was a seed that church planted in a young boy's life. And it took some time for that seed to mature. But that was a defining moment, wasn't it?
The defining moment was that moment at the altar at 10 years old.
Wow.
The life that I lived, I don't go to church, but I'm very spiritual, and I go to church if I'm invited. But for me, Jesus walked on this earth with disciples. When they met in the upper room and the Holy Spirit touched them all and the flame danced on their heads, that's the moment the church was created, the Church of Jesus Christ. And when at that altar, that spiritual exchange where that Holy Spirit entered me, and I became that Spirit-filled little boy, at that moment, I became a member of the Church of Jesus Christ.
Amen. Amen. Listen, we're almost out of time. Can you believe that? And our show, I do want to touch on, you've authored a children's book, a very well-received, well-reviewed children's book, and a poetry book. Can you briefly talk about both of those books before we go?
The children's book is about Jack the Rabbit and his special friend Bunny Rabbit, and how they have to find Mother Nature and warn her, because Mean and Nasty are on the way to her house to spill the cup of goodness. Now, Mean and Nasty are these two little shadowy figures that when they get inside of you at the same time, they get into you. they make you do bad things and get bad results. And Mother Nature's job is to, when somebody out there in the world wants to do good, she has the cup of goodness, which is like a trophy cup, and it's full of sparklies and goodness. And when somebody out there in the world wants to do good, she tips the cup, the sparklies go out to the person who is looking to do the good. When they do the good, the sparklies come back into the cup, a circle of success. And Mean and Nasty are on their way, Jack and Bunny found out, to her house to spill the cup of goodness.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. What about the poetry book?
The poetry is it's not normal poetry. It's not like something that you get tired of reading. It's stuff like loving you is being able to see you in the twilight of my dreams. Love is mutual understanding, growth, and individual trust of one's own insecurities. To receive love, one must allow oneself to see through a teardrop. To give love is to bond your will with your gift of life and distribute evenly throughout your years. Stuff like that. Simple, easy.
Wow. Rich, we're almost out of time. I would tell you, I'm going to drop a link down below for your website for people to go to connect with this incredible, what a comeback story that you have. We're going to drop that link down below so people can get in touch with you. It's been such an honor to have you in our studio today. Will you come back and see me?
Anytime, anytime. I want to thank you wholeheartedly for me being allowed to come here and share just a little bit of my story and my life's history with you, because...
Well, I'm looking forward, I'm going to tell you the truth, I'm looking forward to having you back, because you dropped so many truth bombs during this interview that we want to deep dive on. Just so much goodness out of this interview. I believe that lives are going to be touched and transformed by this interview. I'm so grateful that you came into the studio today. I can't wait to have you come back, because God is up to some big things in your life. Before you go, any projects you're working on currently that you want to share with the audience?
I invented something. I'm also an inventor.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about that.
It's a patent. I have a patent. It's pending for it's.
Well, you don't have to say what it is.
Yeah.
So, but you'll have to watch the next show to when the patent is cleared. But here is a man that put a challenge out to God to have your back, and has he had your back ever since?
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt.
So, author, certified engineer, IT engineer, is that right?
Yeah.
Author, and now inventor as well. You're going to have to come back and share some more on our show. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Rich,
Thank you for having me.
coming by.